Hi ladies and gentlemen, remember last week we covered about the F Audio Minor? This week we're going to cover another one of their earphones, and this time it's a major hitting one. Today we're going to talk about the F Audio Major. Welcome to the Super Chunk Show. So just a bit about F Audio. They actually started their business back in 2014. They initially started with the OEM business, OEMing earphones from other companies, and later ventured to resell earphones and do that reselling custom kind of thing. And eventually they actually had a major product launch, I think back in 2018, 2019 with the F Audio Minor and F Audio Major. Today we're going to talk about the F Audio Major. Now, one thing to note is that the Super Chunk Show is not sponsored by F Audio in any manner. So the earphone you see that I have today might look a bit beaten up. That is simply because I actually borrowed them from a friend and had them for about 2 to 3 weeks, so I can get a very serious impression on them. Now let's first talk a bit about the F Audio's Major build and technology inside it. Now if you're wondering why the Major looks so familiar to the F Audio Minor, that's because it really does look almost identical except for the color. The F Audio Major is in anodized gold, while the Minor is in anodized rose gold. Both of them are made from CNC aluminum, which is a fantastic chassis material. Really, because aluminum is a very nice light metal to work with. It adds to comfort, and it also adds that metallic coloration, which I prefer over plastic. Plastic often adds a sort of bloom to the base and it's not as tight or fast. But anyways, with that, let's dive into technology of the F Audio Major. Now, everyone knows how the acoustic chamber of a dynamic driver earphone affects how it behaves and how it reacts with regards to how it reproduces sound. Now, the F Audio Major has something that is rather cool. It has a triple built-in acoustic chamber, so they actually managed to tweak sound using 3 of these state chambers and to really give you a kind of customization rather than the usual single acoustic chamber where tweaking can be quite limited. So with these 3 acoustic chambers, let's find out what they are. Now, the first acoustic chamber is the cavity in which the CNC machining has carved out a hole for you to place the driver in. That is the first cavity, but it is also important to know that the F Audio Major towards the back of the driver has another cavity. So in short, you can think of it like a Russian doll for the first 2 acoustic chambers, where one of it is inside another, and this really helps dampen the internal resonances of the earphone. You get a lot less rather of those strange harmonics that is in play with this dual acoustic chamber design. Now, the third acoustic chamber is actually the nozzle. The F Audio Major actually employs the use of a copper sound tube, which is very interesting. This is very different from Minor. Minor actually has a steel sound tube. Steel tends to add a bit of a bright character, but the copper lends a bit of the warmth when it tweaks with the resonances. So it is very interesting to see how F Audio use all these acoustic chambers to tweak the sound. One thing I forgot to mention just now is that the F Audio Major actually employs a 2-pin design. So if you want to roll cables around, you actually can. It's very simple. It's just the basic 0.78 mm 2-pin design. So if you really want to roll, you can, but the stock cable that they give is actually already pretty good. So driver-wise, the F Audio Major actually uses a dual diaphragm dynamic driver. I think this is very cool. I haven't heard of a company that currently actually employs this sort of technology. So anyways, we've got to the 2 diaphragms that is used. The first one would be a titanium foil driver, followed by a second one that is made of fiber. This implementation is actually very, very interesting. The titanium driver is able to reproduce fine details very well, but the fiber driver, on the other hand, is slightly dampened, of course, because of the material, right? It's less resonant as titanium. It actually lends a bit more to the low frequencies, and I think this is a very smart way of tweaking the dynamic driver to suit a very well-rounded tuning. Remember earlier I said that the F Audio Major is almost identical to the Minor. This is exactly the same for fit as well. With regards to fit of the Major, they fit very well, and it's basically hinged on 2 points, the ear tips and the cable. So towards the part of the earphone where it touches your concha, it doesn't really touch my concha, so there is no contact on that third axis, but Based on these two axes, it actually is very comfortable, and it's also important to note that the F audio major is actually very light, which adds in its comfort factor. And before I move on to sound, if you like the content so far, please kindly like and subscribe and press the bell icon to be updated on the latest happenings on the Superchunk show. And next, I'll move into sound. Now let's talk about sound. The F audio major actually has a V-shaped sound signature. This is to say that the bass and highs are a little bit more prominent and the mid-range is slightly recessed. The part that really attracted me to the major is that the mid-range is extremely liquid and lush, and we'll dive into that in a bit. But right now, let's start off sound with bass. Now, let me just start with a few words that I can quickly say about the bass of the F audio major. It has a good balance, it has good resolution, and is very resonant. The major has a very good natural sounding quality in bass. I find that F audio is very wise not to overwhelm the bass department, and it can be very tempting for manufacturers to do so. But you know, there is a fine line not to cross, and they did not cross it, which I find to be very admirable. In terms of resonance, the F audio also allows for a bit of harmonics to ring rather than to have an extremely fundamental note. Resolution of bass is also very good. It delivers textures effortlessly, and bass is portrayed with warmth and presence. Now, in terms of harmonics, the major also allows for quite a bit of harmonics to ring rather than to have an extremely strong fundamental tone, which can make music sound a bit more unnatural. So, you know, they allow more resonance to take place. Music actually sounds very natural with it. I think at the end of the day, F audio did an amazing job not to let, you know, this amount of bass bleed into the mid-range, and it's quite a good job, honestly. Now, mid-range is easily my favorite part of the major, just like how I like my cheese. It is basically thick but with character. The earphone is tuned with a slight V shape, with mid-range being slightly recessed. It is by and large warm and lush, but it has enough finesse to keep up with fast and complex music. The major is a warm earphone, but it's important to state that the vocals have a lovely upper harmonic, which allows them to sound rather natural, rather than, you know, for them to just be overly warm and rolled off. Mid-range here is very versatile. You know, this is something that I find very interesting with the F audio major. With regards to mid-range, they have a lot of details, but they don't portray it in a way whereby it is, you know, saying, hey, look at me, I'm the detail, look at me, that kind of thing. You have to actively seek it out rather than it being shouty and all. If you wish to have a more relaxed listen, you can actually do that with the F audio major. Just listen to it normally. It is very smooth and lush, and the details are not in your face, but they are present should you ever seek for them. Next, let's move on to treble. I find that the treble extension of the major is good for the warmish signature that it has. Cymbals have enough presence and do not get lost in the mix. It is crisp without getting, you know, that grating sensation. There's one aspect of cheese that even I today don't really like. I don't really like to grate my cheese. I always have that anxiety that what if I grate my own fingers, you know? It's one of those things. But I must say, if you're looking for a top shelf, spacious and airy earphone, the major does not have that in spades, but this is to no fault of its own, because F audio chose to tune this earphone to be rather warm and intimate. There is nothing wrong with that signature. If you like the kind of signature, this is probably the earphone that you should look out for. Now let's talk about soundstage, starting with width and height. The F audio major is very good with regards to width and height, but I wouldn't say that they are class leading. This is simply because of its warmish signature. With a warmish signature, you get a lot of resonance, but these resonance also, you know, hinder soundstage slightly. They are very sweet to listen to, but it does not give you a very wide or tall impression. Thus, I would say that they sound like a medium-sized concert hall with a slightly wet acoustic. But I must say that this is a very good result for such an IEM, because the major is actually tuned to be a warmish earphone. And for such a warmish earphone to have this kind of soundstage, I think is actually very admirable. Next, let's talk about depth. The depth of the major is really good. It has a 3Dness with regards to the sound, and it has a good contrast between the back of the music and the front of the music. If you're listening to some music that has great depth, such as an orchestra where some instruments are really far back and you have some instruments really forward, you can actually tell them apart very easily. Like obviously the trombones are really all the way at the back and the flutes are at the front, that sort of thing. You can tell that very easily. Lastly, separation. Bear in mind that the signature is a warmish type. It does give enough separation between its instruments. Now, is it very clearly defined? Not really, because for those types of signature, usually they have a very strong fundamental tone. But for the F audio major, you get actually a lot more harmonic response, which kind of makes separation a bit more tricky. But on the whole, you still can tell where the instruments are and how separated they are. They are not like one huge blob of mess, it is not. It is just enough for you to tell them apart. Now, just some quick comparisons. I have the Fur Audio M3 on hand as well. Well, the price range is quite similar to that of the F Audio Major, so I'll be comparing it. Now, if you want an earphone that is very large and warm, you know, the Major is fantastic for that, even versus the M3. Where the M3 does better, I think, it actually has better separation and soundstage. And to be honest with you, both of these two earphones are actually quite different. So if you want a warm, large signature that you can just relax and when you want to listen to details, just actively listen for it, the Major is the earphone to get. But if you want something that has a wider soundstage and the separation is better, maybe the M3 can be part of your consideration. Now finally, in conclusion, at the end of the day, the F Audio Major is a very competent release from F Audio. If you like things that are warm and fuzzy with good resolution, the F Audio Major should be in the running for consideration at the US $1,300 price point. I must say that I really did enjoy the F Audio Major and I can't wait to see more from F Audio in the near future. Thank you very much. This is Kenneth from the Super Chong Show, and I hope to see you guys soon.